Welcome everyone to What the Force, and welcome to our new segment, The Power of Myth and Symbolism in Star Wars. And why we wanted to specifically start talking about this was because Ty and I literally couldn't stop talking about it with each other. And so we thought we'd start recording it, and so you guys could listen in. Myth and symbolism in the visual media of movies and the larger canon really does speak to attentive audiences because, they affect the audience on a subconscious level, and it influences us in how we interpret the character's motivations. And maybe it's almost like dropping Easter eggs onto where the characters will be heading within their arcs. So we wanted to kind of talk about what we see within the Star Wars media. And we'll specifically maybe target a couple of movies or one of the TV shows. And we just want to talk about them, generally speaking, about what we see from a symbolic, mythological perspective, so that we can really say, here, we see this, and what does that mean? Why are they trying to do that? I do acknowledge that some of this might have already shown up on Tumblr, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, all of these other places. The Star Wars audience is very attentive. They see these things, but we wanted to specifically talk about them. So we acknowledge that you might have already seen this. We love that about you guys, but we want to talk about it together.
Yeah, totally.
And if you see stuff that we didn't see, feel free to reach out to us. We like talking about this. So obviously, because we're doing a podcast about it. So I want to introduce my co-host. I am Marie Claire. I didn't say that before, but my co-host in this segment is Ty Black. Welcome, Ty.
Hello again. Really excited about these topics. These are so much fun.
I spend a lot of time messaging Ty with random thoughts.
That's true.
Like, hey, I've got this random thought. What do you think? And then she's like, I'm sure she's rolling her eyes.
Oh, no. And it's so funny because it's Marie Claire will message me and then I'll kind of be like, oh gosh, this is reaching. And then I'll think about it for maybe an hour and then I'll come back and be like, oh my goodness. I thought it happens here too, or here's a parallel, or it happens in this movie, or it happens in Clone Wars. And, that was a cool thing about Star Wars. Once you start, how you say, putting on your tinfoil hat, it's just, you can't stop.
I was so happy to hear Wayward Jedi put on his tinfoil hat.
Right.
I feel like I'm crazy half of the time because I think about this stuff and I'm like, am I the only one that sees this? This is so weird. Why am I the only one that sees this weird thing?
Yeah. And then Wayward Jedi is like, yeah, so Holdo and Poe's relationship has to do a lot with some abuse maybe that Holdo experienced. And you're like, oh, yeah, we're on the right track.
Yeah. We're not weirdos. You guys are weird.
Everybody's thinking weird thoughts.
No, I know. But I mean, I think that it's important to acknowledge that you feel something or you see something that's weird.
Yeah.
Like that you're like, that was weird to see in the show, in the movie, in the book, because it means that either it was done unconsciously or it was done on purpose.
And both are important.
And both are important because, and we're going to get to this. We're going to talk about kind of some of the success and failures of some of the things that they've done and all that stuff. But we really just wanted to talk about it primarily. And this segment is named The Power of Myth and Symbolism in Star Wars because of, a tie to Joseph Campbell and The Power of Myth, that, docuseries that he came out with because of the hero's journey. But we're adding in the symbolism on top of that because it's past that, because we have the ability to not only tell stories verbally in modern day age, but also visually at the exact same time. So it adds a layer of, okay, so maybe that symbolism is cultural and modern cultural. Maybe it was a past important thing, but doesn't land correctly nowadays.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating to dissect this and really talk about it.
It's a good point.
Yeah. So I recently had a conversation with an older gentleman that I would consider to be one of the preeminent people I know that knows the Arthurian legends the most. And why I was struggling with this specifically was I was struggling with the idea that The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi are mythological, yes. They have this like feeling of myth, but they also have a feeling of being a legend in a way. And I'm going to go into that a little bit, and or a fairy tale. And we're going to talk about that a little bit and then talk about what we're talking about. But there's a lot of Arthurian imagery, a lot of, especially in The Force Awakens, there's a lot of sons attempting to kill fathers, the lightsaber in the snow that looks like the Excalibur and it calls to the one true queen. You know, it's got this stuff that's like layered thick, and that is on purpose to make you think that Kylo is truthfully a villain. Mm-hmm. He is Mordred in The Force Awakens, but he's not. Mm-hmm. And he's not because in Arthurian legend, you never feel bad for the villain.
That's true.
This, my friends, is a fairy tale. And although fairy tales have villains, and sometimes they're not redeemed, mm-hmm. this is a very specific type of fairy tale. Right, Ty?
Right. And
This is a Beauty and the Beast fairy tale.
Yes.
And there can be platonic versions of this, right? Storytelling wise. Mm-hmm. We've seen this happen in Avatar: The Last Airbender as a more recent version of this narrative structure where Zuko changes sides halfway through and joins Aang and the rest of the heroes to take down the evil Fire Nation. Yeah. We see it in Avatar: The Last Airbender with Zuko coming to realize his mistakes, redeeming himself, and joining the good guys. But that's platonic. He goes and joins Aang. So you've seen platonic versions of this story in modern storytelling. We've also seen modern versions of it in Beauty and the Beast. We've seen, Disney, right? Mm-hmm. There are tons of examples of this fairy tale narrative structure out there. And the key to it is you have to feel bad for the bad guy. You
have to first be afraid of him, though.
Oh, yeah. He has to be the worst bad guy in existence.
Yeah. And then you have to learn why he has become bad. That's the next step, always.
And there's other, human character-driven fairy tale stories that we can tell you that this one is not. This is not evil father, good son narrative or an evil son, good father narrative. This is not a mother maiden narrative. Mm-hmm. We know this because those characters aren't present and those stories aren't being told. Mm-hmm. Star Wars, the original trilogy, is a father-son narrative in the end. We can see that, right? The father gets redeemed. The son is trying to redeem him. He's trying to see who his father is. Follows very much Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Mm-hmm. An example of a mother maiden narrative is Rapunzel, right? The mother is usually a crone figure who ends up being evil. So Sleeping Beauty, Rapunzel, Ariel, mm-hmm. Little Mermaid, Sea Witch, right?
Yeah.
Those are mother maidens. Even Lion King is father, son, slightly uncle filling in for father in that narrative and coming into his own against the patriarch of the family.
Yeah.
So this is a fairy tale, and we see a lot of symbols and symbolism in the narrative that indicates that. But first, we heard it from the director's mouth.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that, Ty?
Yeah, sure. J.J. Abrams, in his commentary of The Force Awakens, and this is all over the internet, everyone's talked about it, shared it, whatever, in some form or another. But yeah, JJ is very sentimental as a director. He's very in tune. He loves romance. I think in one of his interviews before, he said the first thing that he does when he identifies characters, when he starts writing characters and everything, he identifies the romance. He figures out what the romance is going to be in the story. And if you watch Lost and you watch, Felicity or he even does it in like Super 8 with the kids. He does it in Mission Impossible 3 that he directed. The romance is integral to the storyline. So we know he's a very sentimental director. He also just loves the characters. And one of the things that he says about Star Wars is that it's a fairy tale in the commentary. And he says, if you're looking at a fairy tale, what do you have to have? A castle, a prince, and a princess. And they're all sort of, how he puts it, prerequisite elements. These locations that we set our story in and our characters in are very important, and they're an important part of the fairy tale, which is interesting because he talks a lot about setting. So you have like Maz's castle, and then you also have like on Starkiller Base, like the snowy forest, which is incredibly romantic.
And the meadow on Tokadana.
Yes. Where
Kylo and Rey meet the first time and have their interaction.
You know what that reminded me of, actually? The ravine area where they go down and then she kind of crawls back up while she's like shooting at him. It reminds me a lot of that show. Remember that TV show Merlin?
Yes.
Merlin was like notorious for like reusing settings. Because they didn't have like a very big budget, but they always had this like one area that was like this ravine, and it was that beautiful like moss covered and just very magical looking area in the forest, and it reminded me so much of that, like kind of like, and that kind of brings us back that Arthurian,
and I think that those Arthurian symbols, like the sword in the snow. The helmets, the knights of Ren, the castles. It's trying to get us into that mode, because we associate Arthurian with fantasy in a way, right? Because there's Pendragons and there's wizards and there's royalty and there's code of honor.
Yeah.
And it's all there layered very thick, but it's not Arthurian.
Yeah. No, it's not.
It's not. And it's trying to get you into that medieval feeling of a fantasy, though.
Yeah. When Rey has her force vision of the past and the present and well, I don't think she sees the future, but I mean, she does have like this force vision when the lightsaber calls to her, and she sees a vision of Kylo Ren, and it's very, very heavy-handed on the fairy tale imagery. She sees this dark figure, this hooded dark figure, and he like kind of like does this lunge thing at her, and we can tell like this is probably a vision of the past, where she's like kind of tuning into it from the destruction of the temple or something like that. And then when she sees him in the forest for the first time, she recognizes him. And like that was establishing that like we're supposed to be scared. She's scared of this figure. We're supposed to be scared of this figure. And it's setting us up for like
this crash.
Yes.
Yes.
For when he takes his helmet off.
Yes. And like people that have talked about this behind the scenes, when they're in the interrogation room, they specifically tried to make him look like a prince.
Yeah.
Like they did his hair. They made him look super pretty because it was the reveal of the monster actually being beautiful underneath.
And JJ literally says in the commentary, but when his mask comes off, you can see Adam Driver and he just looks like a sort of prince. And it makes no sense. Why would he wear a mask? And they even go into like how they were going to take the mask off in an earlier scene, but they found it more interesting to kind of hold on to that a little bit longer. Not take the mask off in front of Snoke, but to take the mask off in front of Rey so that we get the same reaction that she does.
Mm-hmm.
It's so romanticized. It's so romanticism era. That's what it feels like to me. And that's what makes it such a fairy tale. Kind of the romanticism of it.
I mean, even down to Adam Driver, what his costume is, right?
Oh.
And they worked a long time to figure out what the right costume is. So he's wearing these black robes. He's wearing this helmet that feels very medieval. His sword has a cross guard. It feels like a knight's sword. His lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a weapon he uses to kill. He feels like a medieval knight.
Yeah.
And he is the leader, the master of the Knights of Ren.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost smacking you in the face how he's supposed to come off as this fallen dark prince.
Yeah. And also the purpose of the Knights of Ren was to go and find artifacts. Like, that's one of the things I think they talk about in the visual dictionary.
Very Arthurian.
Yes. Very Arthurian. Like, it's really, again, very romantic in its ideas, and it's so JJ. It's so JJ to say, oh, they're searching for stuff, but what are they searching for? Oh, they're the Knights of Ren, but what do they do? Oh, he's like this dark prince, but why? Like, what is his backstory? Yeah. Like, I think that's great.
I think that it's also people recognize this symbolism on screen.
Yeah.
Like, they've seen shows. There's lots of movies with Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table in the forefront. But the truth is, Arthurian legend is tragedy.
Yes.
And does not follow the path that now we have seen laid out in The Last Jedi, or even the path that was very clearly placed in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
I want to stop for a minute and talk about the interrogation scene, because we were just in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about the symbolism of, because we have to.
Yeah.
Ty. I know that this is an uncomfortable conversation for two ladies to be having about what we consider actually to be a weird romantic scene. Uh-huh. But actually, for many people in the audience, it felt like a violation. Mm-hmm. It felt like a power struggle, and it felt like a rape scene. Mm-hmm. So we should talk about that, because symbols and how they happen is important. And even if it was unintentional, because the director was trying to go for one thing, but also she was still a prisoner.
Yeah.
You know, it ends up playing kind of differently. So in the book, in that scene, he unlocks her manacles.
Yeah.
She is free in that scene. When he has those conversations, he doesn't hold her. He does invade her mind, which is a form of using somebody. Mm-hmm. But if we compare it to what happened with Snoke in The Last Jedi, certainly he's trying to be more gentle, etc. It still is a violation of who she is. But she turns it around on him.
Yeah. She
fights back. She is able to actually wound him. Mm-hmm. It's a really, really interesting thing. I don't know that if they were trying to make him sympathetic in that moment, which I don't think that they were, I don't think it landed correctly.
Yeah. I don't think it landed correctly either, because I never caught on to any sort of romance after watching Force Awakens a couple of times. Never caught on to it. I thought, God, I can't even go into what I thought. But that scene to me was just about Rey and just about like fighting back and being strong. I didn't think of him as an abuser, because I thought he was just this lost little boy that like was kind of in over his head in a way. That's how I saw him from the very beginning. I feel like her looking at him, like a lot of Reylos online like to say, like, oh, she looked at him and she saw like this beautiful man. It's like, no, she didn't. Like, she was confused as to why he was wearing a mask.
she was surprised that he felt like he needed to wear a
Yes.
mask. That's different. That's a very different thing than being like, oh, he's so cute.
Yeah.
No, she still, when you wear a mask, you're typically trying to hide some sort of ugliness.
Exactly.
And she didn't see it externally.
Yeah, because she calls him a creature in a mask. And then he takes it off and she goes, oh, he's not a creature. Like, I'm very confused. Like, and again, like, Ray's not, like, she's out of, Jakku for the first time ever in her life. And this is all, there's so many things that are happening to her. She's not going to immediately see, like, a cute boy and just be like, oh, he's attractive. No, like, it's not that simple. And it shouldn't be that simple. But yeah, I think that scene, but when they interpret it in that way, where they push it a little bit too far, they just take it out of the context, I think. And when you take it out of context, you've ruined it for yourself.
Yeah, because they're not there yet.
Yeah.
There is this subtlety that they're building on, and I think that they could have done it in different ways if they wanted to play up that he wasn't as big a monster. Mm-hmm. But I think it would have been more shocking when Han Solo was killed if they hadn't had her in that interrogation chair that we saw literally is a version of the one that Poe was in just moments, just half an hour or an hour beforehand.
Yeah, that's true.
And we as the audience have to believe that he is a monster.
Yeah.
That is very key for the Beauty and the Beast
absolutely
fairy tale structure.
Yeah, they push it as far as they can.
Yes. This has a lot of parallels to the scene in Beauty and the Beast when Beauty chooses to save her father and she ends up in the jail of the castle, and the Beast is, intimidating her, but then, welcomes her as a guest. Kylo even says,
you're my guest.
Where am I? Who are you? What am I doing here? And he says, you're my guest.
Yeah.
And she's like, where are my friends? And he's like, those the villains, thieves, you'll be happy to know I have no idea. It's like, okay, dude, calm down. And it really plays Shakespearean to me. Mm-hmm. It really plays like, okay, two houses, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene.
Oh, yes.
It plays like these are the dark side and the light are two halves of the houses of the universe, and they're playing out this eternal drama, and these two are Romeo and Juliet. And we hear the Romeo and Juliet suite built into a bridge of race theme when Kylo picks her up on Tokadana and carries her away to his ship.
Oh, yes.
Ty, why is Romeo and Juliet in my Star Wars?
Oh, my Lord.
John Williams put that in there on purpose. He knows what that means. He knows that Romeo and Juliet, and I will try to find a clip of that specific piece of music with...
Oh, I know where it is. I've listened to it on YouTube like hundreds of times.
Yes, I'll try to add it in. It is Romeo and Juliet. Kylo picks her up on Tokadana. John Williams put this in on purpose.
But I know there's a Tumblr person who put his music to all of Kylo Ren's scenes to make it more dramatic, to be more Kylo Ren-esque. And it is beautiful. And I think you should link to it at some point.
I can link to it in this too, but
it's hilarious.
It's really these are subtle.
Yeah.
This is subtlety to be like John Williams throws in Easter eggs.
Yeah.
He plays as long as the directors let him know their intentions. I am guessing when JJ was having conversations with John Williams, he was like, this needs to feel like a fairy tale. There's other behind the scenes hints that we have heard, and I'll bring them up briefly. Like an actor who auditioned for the role of Kylo Ren, Eddie Redmayne, he was interviewed about a different thing, and they asked him about interviewing for Star Wars and for the role of Kylo Ren, and they were asked to read Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
As Darcy. Darcy as an evil guy.
Yeah. I would be shocked if Daisy and Adam did not have a what do? They do a like John and the girl plays Rose.
Yeah.
Her and John did a chemistry read. That's what it's called. So I would be very surprised if we didn't find out after 9 that Adam and Daisy had done a chemistry read.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised because I know we've seen that Daisy did, for her first read, she did the interrogation scene, but usually they do a read afterwards with other actors that they know they're going to be interacting with a lot. Yeah, I would be very surprised if we didn't find that out. But they would have had to been very, very secretive about that one.
Yes, I think so. I think, well, we didn't even, until the IMAX poster of Rey being on the dune came out, we didn't know Rey was the main character.
Yeah, we thought.
They kept that under hat. We thought maybe Finn was the main character.
Yep.
And although he is a main character, this is Rey's journey.
Yeah.
But also Kylo's. We know that now because Rian Johnson has said they're two halves of the same protagonist, very casually. Two halves of the same protagonist is not a villain story.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so, I mean, we see all of the fairy tale medieval symbolism. Is there anything else that kind of caught your eye in TFA and The Last Jedi that we want to call out? I mean, there's a few more things like, you know, the bridal carry. It's very superhero-like, even though he makes her pass out first.
Yeah.
You know, it's very like let's acknowledge he is the beast in this.
Yes.
I mean, the beast brings Belle back to the castle in a very similar way. It is kind of against her will.
Yeah.
The stalking in the meadow feels very much like in Sleeping Beauty when Briar Rose has the song with the prince in the meadow in that creepy kind of way, Once Upon a Dream.
Yeah.
That meadow, that forest on Tokadana, like it feels very visually like that, where they're kind of chasing each other around in this environment. It has a lot of Death in the Maiden imagery.
Mm-hmm.
I.e. Hades and Persephone, in how Hades gathered up Persephone and stole her from her mother in nature and took her to the underworld on his black chariot. His flying black chariot with 4 horses.
Yeah. That
imagery of Kylo's shuttle leaving with 4 TIE fighters in front strikes me as Hades and Persephone's leaving the meadow every single time. Same with the, you know, dude in black, woman in white, bridal carry.
Yeah. I mean, they're down to their introductions as, like, their costuming. You know, like Rey has the mask that she wears in the very first scene that she's in.
Oh, it's almost opposite his.
It looks, yeah, it looks like it's the same shape in the eyes.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. That part of it I just love.
And his mask is hard and metallic.
And hers is soft.
Mm-hmm. And earth-like.
Yes. Yeah, I'm really glad they went with earthy colors for Rey as opposed to white. Like Luke, Luke, when he was introduced, he had on this very white, bright white garb, even though he lived on a desert planet. It seems like it should have been a lot dirtier. And whereas Rey comes in and she's got kind of this sand-like garb that's perfect for that desert atmosphere that she lives in. And like you said, it's very earth-like, very down to earth and warm, as opposed to white, as opposed to like stark white.
Yeah. Yeah. And some will argue that means that Rey is gonna as white as she probably is represented. But I I don't see that. Neither does Ryan, the director of The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
He said she's like the most pure person that has ever existed in Star Wars.
She's just
like
real.
She's just real. She's a real person, and good people can feel frustrated and can show their emotions.
Exactly.
But that does not mean that they're bad people.
Exactly.
Okay. So one last parallel that I saw on Tumblr, I saw on Twitter, that Darth Vader's mask is the Beast's rose.
Oh, that's cool. Yes.
Because
I did see
Kylo
that.
speaks to the Darth Vader mask like it is the thing that is chaining him to the dark side.
Yeah.
I.e. in the monster. And the resolution of the Darth Vader legacy is what will set him free.
Yeah.
And the curse of Darth Vader.
Yeah. Whew.
I love it. Shivers. I'm shook.
There's so many things there. I love how in Last Jedi, how that helmet is used. Again, like how, first of all, we know that Darth Vader's helmet's still around, so I wonder if it's going to show up in 9. That's really interesting.
It's mentioned in the Last Jedi visual dictionary.
Good.
Did you want me to tell you what it said?
Yeah.
It said, posing a question almost, it said, Darth Vader's helmet is still aboard the Finalizer, which is good because the Supremacy got destroyed.
Yeah.
Darth Vader's helmet is still aboard the Finalizer. Perhaps Kylo is too afraid to face it.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing because he's filled with regret for killing his father. Oh my goodness. That's amazing. No, so the cool thing about like masks and whatnot, and the theme of masks and what they represent, that we didn't actually touch upon this before, but we should have, with Ryan wanting to completely destroy Kylo's mask, so much so that he stomped it to pieces.
To pieces, yeah. But the good news is Adam Driver got to keep his own mask that he wore in TFA, and same with his lightsaber. So I think that's pretty wonderful that Adam still got to keep that, the original, and they made a new one for this one.
Yeah, for that. And they said like there's a really cool visual thing that happens where when Kylo smashes it the first time and he looks at it, it looks like Darth Vader's mask. Oh,
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, like he smashes
so
it
cool.
And it kind of like, it just looks...
compacts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's freaky. And then he looks at it again and he keeps pounding the crap out of it. Like he just doesn't want that anymore. So, but that's all, again, layers.
Layers and layers and layers. And that's the thing about Star Wars, at least with the sequel trilogies, as well as the other ones, right? The original trilogy and the prequels, there's lots of layers. I've discovered a lot of them, even just talking about droids.
Yeah.
Like, you know, talking about R2-D2 and the layers that are involved with his journey, open up these wider like parallels and conversations about, okay, well, this means something to me. It means I'm picking up something. And yeah, it might be just through my specific lens. But if that was done on purpose, then it means something to the director and to the storyteller as well.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I want to have a little bit of a reset, because Beauty and the Beast is not the first version of that fairy tale structure.
Yeah.
It actually goes back further than that, and probably further than the one I'm going to mention. But I see more parallels to this story that I'm about to mention, and it's going to sound weird, so bear with me, guys. What, are you excited, Ty?
I like weird.
Okay. It's going to sound weird because of the people I'm going to mention. Not many people are going to know about, or they're going to have certain assumptions about who they are and what they represent. But I think that the parallel is wonderful. And then I want to get some of your reactions as we go along, Ty, because although we've talked about this, I don't know if you've heard my full thesis on why I think this story is actually really good parallel to this other story. Mm-hmm. So Ready for this? Beauty and the Beast, one of the first Beauty and the Beast type mythological stories out there was actually the story of Cupid and Psyche. And Cupid is not in the original Greek mythology, not the cherub, bare butt little fairy that some people associate with Cupid. He was a strong, beautiful man with wings. And he was the son of Venus, who was considered to be a winged, heroic type figure that even the gods were afraid of.
He's scary.
He's scary because he could make you do things that you didn't want to do.
Ooh.
He could make you fall in love. He could force you to be somebody that you didn't think you wanted to be.
Oh, wow.
And even it says in the legend even that even Zeus or Jupiter was afraid of him. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So let's talk about Psyche. And Psyche, like the basis of the word for psychology, it means the mind. But in Greek and Roman mythos, it actually more means the soul. Mm. So Psyche was this beautiful woman who was the daughter of a king and a queen. They never go into who they were. She was the youngest of 3 daughters, and she was sought by suitors far and wide, similar to Helen of Troy, for her hand. She was called the second coming of Venus. It's a very interesting term.
Yeah, a goddess.
A goddess born on the earth.
Cool.
So she had this base power. She had this base natural ability, right? She was beautiful. And she was nice, right? Venus, struck by the fact that people were talking about her, she actually says, like during the legend, like, people have been neglecting my temples to go and hang out with this lady. What? She sends Cupid to punish Psyche, to make her fall in love with a monster. And also to, at the very base, don't fall in love with anybody but a monster. So he brings these 2 vials of fountain fluid. I don't know exactly what they are. And he puts some on her eyes and he puts some in her hair. And one is good and one is bad. And the one on her hair makes her even more beautiful, but she can't seem to find love. Unfortunately, he is struck by her. He's like, wow, she's really interesting. He thinks he's thinking about her all the time and accidentally pokes himself with his own arrow. And because he's so distracted, and falls in love with her.
Oh, goodness.
Psyche is unable to find a mate. All of these people find her incredibly beautiful, but she can't make a love's connection because she's out of favor with Venus. Mm-hmm. So her father goes to I'm kind of telling the whole story. I'm sorry. It's just really interesting to me. So her father goes to the Oracle of Apollo and says, what's going on? Is my family cursed? And Apollo says, oh, no, it's just because she's destined to marry a winged monster who shoots fire and iron at people, and even the gods fear.
Oh, wow.
And the oracle says, if you abandon her on the highest mountaintop, she will be taken by her husband. He abandons her. And in that bridal march, there is mourning wailers. They treat it like a funeral because they feel like they are abandoning her to her death. That this monster they all believe is a monster who is merely doing the will of his mother as his job. Uh-huh. The will of his mother. So it's a bridal and combined funeral march because they feel like she is going to die.
Wow.
So she is left on the mountaintop and is picked up by Zephyr, the winds, and brought to a meadow, which is brought, and then she finds her way into a castle, a palace, where she is treated like a guest. Very Beauty and the Beast style. The serve, like there's music that plays like without anybody playing it. She's served beautiful food, treated beautifully, and then is brought to her husband, who she cannot see. It is in the dark. She is not allowed to see her husband, who she is married to. But she's not really married. This is important. This is because they're not equals.
Yeah.
Right? She thinks she has married a monster. He will not allow her to see him, but they seem to connect in these intimate ways in the darkness without ever actually being together. Okay. I'm coming. It's coming along. Right?
Yeah.
I'll link to a summary of this story. Like it's all there. I'm not making any of this up. This is the summary of the story. She becomes pregnant. And because of fears of her family that she is going to have a monstrous baby, she decides to bring a light into the darkened chamber. She sees him sleeping and he looks like a handsome prince. Why are you making that face?
I didn't realize it went this far. Oh my God.
And because of her shock, she burns him with the oil on his shoulder and hits herself with his arrow and falls even deeper in love with her own, husband.
Yeah.
That's not the end of it. I'm just telling you where we're at the end of TFA.
Oh my Lord.
Okay, so Tokadana, we've got check. We've got, wanting to know who he is and, where she belongs. Them not being equals in that she is, in some ways, more beauteous than him, not feared. And he is fearsome, but not quite what she expects. And that they can't connect until they are intimate with each other, but they're not fully able to know who each other are.
Yeah.
Okay. There's the sense of abandonment that she feels from being abandoned on Jakku, right? There's the sense of abandonment from Luke as we get into The Last Jedi. Whoa. There's also this curiosity that comes out in The Force Connects. There's this curiosity that comes out in wanting to know, what is this power within me that she is pregnant with?
Yeah.
That she took from Kylo.
Yeah.
She is pregnant with Force power.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know this? Okay. I don't see anybody else talking about this, so maybe I'm the only one.
That's a good point.
He is beautiful, not the monster that she always imagined him to be, right? And he is forced to do the things that he has to do because of the institution, the gods that he is part of. He is playing a role within the hierarchy of... He forces people who don't want to fall in love to fall in love. He forces people to do things against their will. What?
Mm-hmm.
It also showed this discovery of who he is sort of parallels the discovery of, in The Last Jedi, of Rey discovering Kylo's humanity. So he's wounded on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Ben. poor Cupid, and he runs away from her because when gods are truly wounded, it takes them actually a long time to recover in mythology. Mm-hmm. And he goes back to his mother's house.
Huh.
And he languishes in his mother's house. And Psyche is distraught at what she has done and seeks to go to Venus to attempt to get him back.
Huh.
So she is taken into Venus's house. And in some versions of the story, she is literally beaten when she arrives.
Oh, wow.
She is beaten. And we find out later on in the story that Cupid is there. He finds out about this later, but he's too wounded to really know what to do with himself.
Huh.
This is where it kind of gets a little okay, she goes through these trials. She has to complete these tasks for Venus to basically kind of prove her worth. Because there's very Grecian in the myths that Heracles had to complete his labors. Psyche had to complete 3 trials to prove her worth in a way. But even if she proved her worth, she would never live up to Venus's satisfaction of what she should be, because this is a little bit of a mother maiden situation.
Yeah.
But really the story is actually about Cupid and Psyche. So that's where we have to see. And in this story, I kind of view Venus as the first order.
Cool.
Yeah, because it's like no matter what you do, you could never live up to kind of Snoke in a way too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So she tries to make reparations and she goes on these 3 trials. It doesn't really matter what the trials are because they won't really tie to Rey and Kylo's story. So I'm not going to mention them, but she does end up going to the underworld. Mm-hmm. She goes to the underworld to bring back beauty, the beauty of Persephone's cheek to Venus, because she feels like her beauty is faded. And that's why Psyche, the soul, has been able to kind of in the mortal realm overcome here. But this is where we're leaving kind of what I see kind of in the story, the Last Jedi's kind of arc.
Right.
So this is all speculation based on the form and the structure of this very base Beauty and the Beast story. Psyche's curiosity, she opens the box and instead of beauty is sleep, and she falls asleep. Cupid, recovering from his injury, escapes out of window of his mother's house and is on the run from his mother.
Oh my goodness.
And comes to her, finds her asleep, takes the sleep away, takes her to the rest of the gods, pleads his case to officially marry his wife under heaven's auspices, bringing and making her a goddess in her own right, and healing the balance between the heart and the soul.
Amazing.
And that produces their child, which is pleasure.
What? How did I not know that?
I don't know.
That's amazing.
So, yes, Kylo is a little bare butt cherubim.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry. No, he's Cupid. Cupid is a scary mofo.
Yeah.
He is scary because he can force you to do things you don't want to do.
That's amazing. I have read, I did take some Greek mythology and that kind of stuff, classes in high school and college. And I never delved into Cupid and Psyche as much. I think I did a little bit. I knew he was this scary figure, but, and I knew there was that kind of forbidden love aspect of his story. Mm-hmm. But that is really, really telling kind of a lot of the things.
They are equals and they are balanced by the end.
Yeah.
They balance each other out. And actually, in the end, Zeus, Jupiter, thunder god, lightning god, he says, this makes up for all of your misdeeds in the past.
Oh, nice.
By being married and balanced and equal with somebody that is your equal, your soul to your heart.
That is, yeah. Yeah.
Did I just slash Raylo for you?
Yeah, pretty much. That's amazing.
I mean, I never really pictured myself as I'm cool with storytelling,
yeah,
as long as it's interesting. I don't really like ship things.
Yeah.
But Cupid and Psyche is one of my favorite myths. I went to Paris and I specifically had to see the Cupid and Psyche statue that is in the Louvre because it is beautiful. Yeah. And it's all marble and it's one piece of marble and it's touching. And I love the idea that the mind, the soul, and the heart are equals.
Yeah.
And that you need both to move forward.
Yeah, totally.
I do want to add one caveat in.
Yeah.
this is my own interpretation of this myth.
Yes.
It is. I see the parallels. There's lots of parallels to Beauty and the Beast. But like, you know, it has been used as an allegory to show that Psyche is humanity, and it's, you know, the binding of God and the soul. And like, it's been used as an allegory to a lot of academics and religious studies people to show like other allegories. So this is just my own interpretation, that this is the type of storytelling that they are using, which is, you know, we can get to the why in a little bit, but it is telling that this is the storytelling that they're using. And you can see it by the narrative structure that is already being used.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my caveat.
No, yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, if the Beauty and the Beast, even like aesthetically, goodness, it's there in The Force Awakens. Mm-hmm. And then like the symbolism is there in Last Jedi. Like, if that's not enough, if you dig deeper, yeah, you will find the Cupid and Psyche tale. And I only knew it like surface wise. I was like, oh yeah, that's just, yeah, similar to Beauty and the Beast, but taking a deep dive into it, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
And what's even more impressive about it is that it is really a tale of balancing out power.
Yeah.
Right? So in the end, they end up balanced. They end up married under heaven. So we've talked in our previous conversations about how we both feel that, yeah, they were pretty much married in TFA.
Yeah.
But I mean, truthfully equals? Not yet. Mm-mm. You know, if I had to suppose based on what happened, because Cupid and Psyche aligned so well to this story, I would say, okay, this is just pure speculation. So forgive me if I am eternally wrong. But if I have to say, I would say Rey gets or Kylo runs away. Mm-hmm. Kylo runs away. Rey is hurt. He has to protect her. And he has to truthfully make a choice about the type of person he really wants to be.
Yeah.
And he ends up going to the Force.
Yeah.
The cosmic Force, and pleading for the ability for them to be together. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That's what I'm taking from this.
That would make sense.
I can be wrong.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like being wrong. It means that I still don't know everything, which I like feeling. Uh-huh.
Well, if you look at the things that have to...
But it's the only way to bring balance.
Yeah.
And they've already said that this story is about that. That means that Ben needs to be redeemed.
Yeah.
And I want to say some things to the universe. Okay. Okay.
Here we go.
We, as viewers of fiction, cannot put our own moral constraints on fictional characters.
Right.
We cannot dismiss Kylo because we ourselves, me, a human, would not forgive him in my shoes.
Yeah.
We have to view it in the lens that this is a fictional land that happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
And from a fairy tale perspective, as horrible as you have been, the point is, Ben has been a victim. He has been abused and manipulated his whole life. When given the right opportunity and the right clear head and the right understanding of the world, he will make the right decision. Mm-hmm. And we, as viewers, why is that important? Why does that make a difference to us as humans living our lives anywhere on the earth? Why is that important? Why is that important that we can save the ones we love and bring them back from the darkness? Because individual darkness in society is not as tragic as murdering your father. But in allegory, I could be a human living in this world who got drunk, drove my father home from a party, and got into a car accident, and my father died. Mm-hmm. It was an accident. Maybe I was punished for it. But how do I move past that as a human being living in the real world.
Yeah.
These mythological modern day myths help us understand how to forgive ourselves and come to peace with the darkness within ourselves so that we can actually live and exist with it in balance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's lovely.
Please stop putting your need to see people murdered into my Star Wars.
Oh, Lord.
No.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Oh, no, yeah.
We don't have the death penalty in Canada. I live in Canada. I don't agree with the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it actually teaches anybody anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's a larger conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that people need to die to be truly redeemed,
It's not a good one.
it doesn't align with modern morality.
Yeah.
And nor does it show somebody who had a lesser thing that they view as a mistake in their life. It's telling teenagers that if you screwed up as a teenager, that you deserve to die.
Yeah.
Stop telling teenagers they deserve to die. Stop it.
So, I don't know if you saw this on our Reddit Star Wars Cantina. I know you're on there, the Star Wars Cantina subreddit.
I have a lot to read.
That's fine. I do too. I daily. I feel like I have so much to read on there. It's ridiculous. I posted something about this because I was so frustrated at what I've been seeing lately about the redemption stuff. And I have my issues about people who say that Ben deserves redemption or whatever. It's like, well, that's not how we should be talking about it. Because when you say someone deserves redemption, you're kind of putting it in this weird, measurable box that doesn't make any sense. It's not about whether or not someone deserves redemption. And I think when most people say it, they're talking about the character, they're talking about the story, when they're talking about it in a context. In which case, yeah, the character does deserve redemption because we've gotten so much build up to it. But in terms of a person, I feel like they're putting it in this weird measurable area that doesn't make any sense, because you can't measure a person's deserving of you can't measure how much they deserve redemption. That doesn't make any sense. This is interesting because I posed this to the Reddit group. And I said, why are people so against redemption arcs? And something that people kept saying over and over again, which was beautiful, was that redemption is not about justice. It's about compassion. Mm. It's about compassion. It's about grace. It's about realizing what you've done and moving on. It's not about justice. And a lot of the times in our modern day, we want to see bad things be faced with justification. We want people to have justice for Han Solo's death. We want to see Han Solo be avenged. But that's not what we should want. We should just want our main characters to have some sort of peace. I mean, is that wrong? Is my summation stretching a little bit? I don't know.
First and foremost, redemption is about healing yourself.
Yeah.
And I can say that the character of Ben Solo and Kylo deserves chance to be redeemed.
Yes.
But in the end, it's going to be his choice as a character.
Absolutely.
And so in a way, he deserves the choice to choose the right path. And until this point, if we imagine this as he is under a spell or under a like Beauty and the Beast, he's under a spell, or his will has been taken away from him until the moment that Snoke dies. Yeah. He has not had a choice in the matter, nor has he had the ability to understand that choice. And that is the thing. As a society, we fail many people. As a society, they are like the victims of the Empire and the Sith and the Jedi's eternal war, that they are crushed under the boot of these political and ideological pressures pulling back and forth. That the forgotten, the people that end up being used up in society, who are poor, who weren't given education, who weren't given the opportunities. And this is talking about lack of privilege in many ways. These people have many times no choice but to go on the path that we have set out for them as a society. And do those people deserve to have, is it right of us as a society to demand justice of the mistakes that we have invented?
Yeah. Well, that's, you get into like institutional causes versus like individual causes. Like, how responsible is Ben Solo for his own darkness? It's
I mean, they deal with this really well in Marvel. I don't know why people are so hung up on it in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Quite literally, Winter Soldier murdered the parents
bring that up too.
of Tony Stark.
Yeah.
He murdered both of them. He remembers it all, but he wasn't in control.
Yeah.
This is very similar.
Yeah, but what's the difference? Ben Solo cries all the time, so people don't like it. Of course, I'm playing a simple card here. People don't like that Ben is constantly at pool, whereas like with the Winter Soldier, he was brainwashed and he wasn't in his right mind when he did what he did. So people put that line there, but it's not fair because Ben Solo over this really long period of time. I mean, he's supposed to be how old in The Force Awakens? Like
30.
Yeah, basically. Like he's supposed to be like 28, 29. And he's 28, I think. 28.
Yeah. Or
he's 9 years older than Rey. And over this long period of time, like since he was 23 was when he decided to go with Snoke and go be, the master of the Knights of Ren, destroy the Jedi Temple. But before that, since he was in Leia's womb, he's been manipulated by Snoke. And he's always had that little bit of darkness in him. And to me, that's so much more powerful and that's so much more tragic. Like, and it deserves more redemption. It deserves it. It deserves it on a storytelling scale. It deserves the spectacle that it needs for it to have kind of a justification to be there in the first place.
I don't know. Bucky Barnes gets quite emotional at the end of Civil War when Tony asks if he remembers doing it, and he says he remembers everything, and he looks like he's about to cry.
Yeah. I
would argue that I don't know that Ben Kylo has had a choice this whole way along. I think that, and I'm gonna get to it eventually, but there's a wonderful story in the Star Wars universe that shows a perspective of his, could be somebody else's.
Yes.
But in truth, I think he wishes that he couldn't be that way. And we hear it from his own mouth when he says, I'm being torn apart. Yeah. That was a very deep conversation. That was pretty heady. And I think that to summarize all of this again is to say, you cannot say that Kylo doesn't deserve redemption because you have to assume that he's even had a choice. By saying that.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to touch upon was in the next movie, in 9, I honestly believe we're going to get a completely, distraught, unhinged Kylo, or Ben, when he does realize that, what he's done, when he does realize that he has made the same mistakes as Anakin Skywalker. I feel like that will come to light in some way, maybe subtle, or maybe not. And then when he does, I think he's just going to just melt and hopefully cry, because I'm totally fine with that. I want to see my boy. I want to see my boy Ben cry and really honestly just give in to those feelings of loss and regret. And, I think that's enough. I think that is enough for him to have redemption, just for him to realize it. But he has to realize it on a very high emotional level, because again, the Force is about feeling. It's about, reaching out with your feelings, reaching out with compassion, with love. And that is how you connect with the cosmic force, and that's how you allow the cosmic force to be a part of you. And it's only when he's going to do that he's going to turn, or even just realize his mistakes and realize why he was wrong in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's what it's going to take.
I agree. And revenge is not justice.
No.
Justice is not redemption. They don't equate. Justice sometimes brings peace to the victim. Most of the time, revenge doesn't bring peace to the victim. Mm-hmm. But if you are truly able to, this is very Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy, like true Christianity, true Judaism. Yeah. If you are able to forgive the perpetrator of the crime and see them redeemed, everyone is healed.
Yeah.
Not just the victim.
Yeah.
And that's a very maybe idealistic view of what society should strive towards. Mm-hmm. But that's the power of what could happen in fantasy and in fiction that we ourselves should try to aim for.
Yeah, that's what speculative fiction is for. It's for kind of parsing out like what is ideal, what is a good solution that doesn't work in the real world. Like that's the whole point like of originally about Star Wars was, you know, who are our heroes in this scenario of war? And how can we be better people, and how can we face this better, and what can we do that's better for our fellow humanity? Like,
and if 9 is the end of the Skywalker saga, which they haven't officially said it is or it isn't, yeah. If it is the end, it needs to make sense.
Yeah.
It needs to make a point. And the point is that redeeming the father, the progenitor of the Skywalker line, wasn't enough.
Yeah.
You need to redeem all. Mm-hmm. Not just the Skywalkers, but all of the people. You need to heal the galaxy.
Yeah.
From the mistakes of these institutions that have been causing the Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And we're going to get that. Totally going to get that. I'm thinking we might get Skywalker babies, but
hey, pleasure.
At least that. Can we just just know that they get married or something. Just know that they're gonna, I think we're gonna get Skywalker babies, but they're gonna close off the saga. They're gonna end that ring. But, let's do something weird with it. Like, let's take, like, the kids and, like, let's put them on this crazy journey in their future where, you know, they have to go on these insane adventures to new places in the galaxy that we've never seen before. Like, I want that. I want that for Star Wars. I think it's important for Star Wars to move into different directions. So, as long as they do that.
I think that there's potential storytelling after the fact. I don't know that there needs to be Skywalker children other than to know that the story still continues. And you've heard me say that I think that Rey and Ben are going to become moisture farmers. Like I was like, oh man, that is the way they go to Tatooine and they become moisture farmers. Like to me that would be like the closing out of the saga, and they have like little baby Reylo children. Yeah. And they live humble lives away from the galaxy together.
I can see that. I can also see them giving up their force powers in order to do that. Like, they would have to, I feel like. I mean, otherwise they would be searched out and they would be hunted for the rest of their lives. I mean, but giving up the force that's inside of them is like a weird concept. That would be really cool.
I also kind of see that maybe they start and hand off the conversation of what the light is now and what the Force is and what the Jedi are now, because I think that they're going to retain that name. I really do. I know people will fight me on that one, but I think that they're going to retain the new Jedi and what it is and stuff like that, and be a new order.
I feel like they have to, because like that's Star Wars. Like, you can't have Star Wars without having the Jedi. I don't think that's kind of important.
I mean, we've gone far into speculation in this because of the narrative symbolism and the tie back to myth that we see within within the sequel trilogy and how it wraps up the whole thing, I would love to talk about other mythological things and symbolism that we see outside of this. But this has been an amazing conversation about that. The sequel trilogy, at least, is a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts? Is there anything else you want to say?
I do want to say that Irving Kershner, who directed Empire Strikes Back, which is everyone's like favorite Star Wars movie, did say that Star Wars is a fairy tale. And in a recording that I have of his, it's awesome because he repeats it over and over again. It's not science fiction. You don't have to,
it's science fantasy.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about if a ship is on a planet, you know, what kind of gravity does that planet have? What kind of air does that planet have? He's like, you don't have to worry about with Star Wars. All you have to think about is the characters and like the journey that they're on. And what does it mean when they're on the planet for them? Not whether or not they can breathe in that atmosphere. And he says it 3 or 4 times, I think, in an interview. It's a fairy tale. And that's, to me, the coolest thing is like the sequel trilogy is bringing it full circle in more ways than one, because it gets away from a lot of the stuff that George Lucas was focusing on in the prequels, but it's also bringing some things from the prequels into a better realm of understanding.
Oh, the prequels. We can talk about how it is very mythological.
Very mythological.
In its nature, and myth is the earliest form of fairy tale.
Yeah, but the prequels focused aesthetically, not message-wise.
Yes.
Message-wise, it's great. But aesthetically, it was more focused on this clean CGI creation that didn't feel lived in. It didn't have kind of that space western aesthetic that the originals had. So I don't know. I think with some people, the mythology was taken out when they watched the prequels. And then for the other people, the mythology was more emphasized in the prequels. So you just kind of like, you know, it's like a balancing act with the sequels. They decided to kind of take aspects of both and take the best aspects of both, I think, in order to focus on like what the Force really is, what our characters need to do, what kind of journeys need to be in this story. I think they're doing it really well.
I think that some of the failures of the prequels, and it comes down to the fact that he was doing a prequel. And it's just it's
totally agree.
Telling the opening act of a story that's already been told, or like the prologue of a story that's already been told, or in a set of books that's already been told. I think he felt like he needed to make it feel different enough. So that's where the aesthetic change was. And like how everything seemed perfect.
Yeah.
Like on the surface. And I think that this was all purposeful. Like, we could talk for a really long time about the prequels, but I think it was purposeful that everything seemed perfect, but was broken underneath. I think that was purposeful.
I think so too, because he wanted to do a sequel trilogy when he was making the prequels.
Mm-hmm. But I think maybe it just like we talk about, it didn't land as well as he thought it would land. But the storytelling mythic tragedy is all there. And I can't wait to talk to you about it later.
I'm actually rewatching them now, so I'll be prepared.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So much fun.
Thank you, Ty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ty, for joining me and talking about myth and symbolism in Star Wars, in specifically the sequel trilogy. Really wanted to get this idea out of myself of whether Ben deserves redemption. It's not about that. It's about whether he deserves the choice.
Yeah.
And because pretty much everybody deserves redemption. I'm sorry. It's the humanistic take of ourselves, and everybody deserves to be redeemed if they make the choice to be redeemed.
Yeah, completely agree.
Oh. Well, Ty, thank you for joining me on this segment. And I know that we're going to be doing this a lot more in the future. Ty, where can they find you?
They can find me. I make videos on YouTube about a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast. They run parallel, I think. It's Wit and Folly on YouTube. W-I-T is how it's spelled. And also on Twitter, they can find me at black_TYM.
And again, you're going to be back because this is one of my favorite things to do, is to talk about Star Wars and then also to talk about Star Wars with you.
Yeah.
Because you make such interesting points and you get it, which makes the discussion really interesting when you call out something and that builds on to something that I've been thinking about as well. So thank you for joining me and entering on this weird tinfoil hat journey with me.
Oh, it's so much fun. I thoroughly enjoy it.
I am Marie-Claire Gould, and this has been What the Force, the power of myth and symbolism in Star Wars. Thank you for joining us. You can find us on Twitter at WT4 Show or at our website, whattheforce.ca. Please reach out to us and start a conversation. If you saw some more fairy tale mythos or symbolism that we didn't catch, link us to the Tumblrs, link us to your ideas. If you've created a GIF parallel, we want to see it because we love this stuff.
Yes, please.
Take care.